Our guest offers practical language for belonging and a model for authentic leadership rooted in self-trust rather than position. For anyone building belonging in remote or hybrid teams, or simply at their own kitchen table, it is a fresh, human-centered take. Hello, friends, and welcome to I Know I Belong When, an innovation, unbiased production where bold voices, curious stories, and authentic impact amplify knowing that you are invited, seen, heard, and needed. Our conversations go from the boardrooms to the break rooms, from the sidewalks to our living rooms, from our relationships to ourselves. We explore the full spectrum of belonging, the joy of being seen, the pain of being left out, and the courage it takes to build spaces where every identity is welcomed, valued, and loved. We also hold space for each of our unique identities to joyfully prosper and thrive. I am your host, Christopher Bylone, someone who believes knowing you belong is a birthright. Our guest today spent 20 years inside of corporate finance and came out with 3 published books, a Cornell credential, a law degree, and a passport stamped from every continent on Earth, Antarctica included. Meet Öykü Api. Öykü is a thought leader in inclusion, change, and leadership, the holy trinity of things most companies say they care about but quietly underfund. She is the person leaders call when they say this is no longer working. A legal mind for precision, a financial industry resume that gives her real receipts. She teaches people to move with 3 things most boardrooms forget to bring to the table: courage, care, and connection. Now about those 7 continents. Öykü actually stood on all of them, Antarctica recently. She is convinced she has the miles to prove it, that travel makes us more resilient and more adaptive wherever we land next. If you have ever met someone who has watched the light change on ice, broken bread with strangers in 3 time zones, and tasted wine in vineyards on 2 hemispheres, you already know what's coming. She does not flinch in a hard room. She has been somewhere harder. And because 3 books, 2 decades in finance, and 7 continents were apparently not enough for one lifetime, Öykü is also an unofficial wine connoisseur, which means before this episode is over, you are going to want her to pick the bottle. So pour something interesting, pull up your warmest chair in your house, and get your imaginary passport ready. Öykü, welcome to I Know I Belong When.
Thank you very much, Christopher, for that warm introduction. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to a thought-provoking conversation with you.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to be talking about traveling to Antarctica later in the conversation, so I'm very much looking forward to that. So you have a thesis that I have been wanting to put on the show for a while. If a career, a relationship, or a place is no longer serving your growth, leave. That cost is staying higher than the cost of going. So let me start there. What made you stop believing in the version of belonging that asks you to stay quiet and stay put?
Interestingly, for years, I thought I had belonging issues. And only recently, I realized it's actually been about acceptance, but not about belonging. I have a lot of respect for people who feel settled in what they have and don't feel the need to change anything. I'm genuinely happy for them. But that's never quite been me, to be frank. So I grew up with parents who are almost like 2 opposite poles, happily married still, but always on very different ends of the spectrum. I think that shaped my character, and it gave me this natural instinct to observe what really matters and what isn't. And the truth is, I have always struggled to accept what is not working. My default setting usually is not to stay and tolerate it. It's usually to either change it, fix it, or walk away from it completely if it's not working for me. So it's not that I don't value belonging, because I find it so crucial, but it's that I cannot confuse belonging with staying in something that no longer feels true and alive for me, because life is, I think, too short and precious for that.
Absolutely. I think it's also about, it gets to the heart of belonging to yourself,
yes.
Right? It's not about, do you belong in this specific space? However, do you belong to what is inside of you? And if you no longer are feeling like you belong for you, you need to go find the place where you know that you belong. And it's a soul searching conversation. And so it starts with knowing that you belong to yourself.
I completely agree to that. I have a tendency to agree to that. That's why I always resonate too much with Maya Angelou's beautiful quote that says, you belong to nowhere and you belong to everywhere, because it resonates for me. You belong to yourself, your truth, your values, your passions, more than anything else.
Absolutely. If you can't belong to that, then how are you expecting to show up in other places and create belonging for others too, right? Yeah. So you got to start right here at the heart of the matter, and that's yourself. So you've changed careers twice, law, then HR, and now you're stepping into this lovely thing called entrepreneurship. Most people change careers once and call it a midlife crisis. What do you call yours?
What do I call it? I think I call it appetite, Christopher. There's a quiet sentence that I always hear at the big turning points in my life, whether it's a career shift, life decisions, whatever. And it comes so naturally to me. And if only I listen and I completely honest with myself, I can hear the real response. I will share this sentence with you today. So it's, I deserve better. I actually think that's not a sentence, but that's more like a question we should all ask ourselves from time to time, I think. Because most of us usually live our lives in the autopilot mode because it's comfortable, It's safe, it's predictable. But somewhere in the background, there's always that tiny voice whispers to us, you have more potential, you could try this, you could go there, you should do that, you know that. And yet, when you talk to people, they often have this long bucket list of things they never dare to try anything among the list. So a few years ago, I replaced that idea with something else. Instead of having a bucket list, I keep what I call a best moment list for myself. A collection of the moments that made me feel like truly alive, present, happy, being me, in a short sentence. Because one day in my 80s, hopefully, when I look back, I don't want to regret anything. I'm so afraid not to try the things that matters for me. I want to remember all those moments and think and be grateful like I really lived the life that I want for myself. And I want this to be my legacy for my future generations. I think it's a beautiful way of feeling belong to something much bigger than your lifespan.
Yes. Legacy is so important. There's a great book called What is Your Leadership Legacy? It talks about you don't figure out what your legacy is when you're writing your retirement speech. You need to decide what your legacy is from day zero and take every action and decision you're going to make to support what you want your legacy to be, right? Because if you are trying to sum up what your legacy is when you're writing your retirement speech, it's too late. Your legacy is already cemented, right? You had no control over it. But what you should be doing is thinking about what do you want your legacy to be when you are writing that retirement speech? And what are you doing to achieve that legacy?
I love that approach. I should read that book probably. I need to take the name from you afterwards.
Absolutely. It's a book that I read when I was in grad school. A mentor gave it to me, and I gave that book to every single person on my team. Whenever I'm joining a new team, I give them Your Leadership Legacy as a way of like, this is what we're going to do together. So I highly, highly recommend that book.
Okay, noted.
Okay, so speaking of appetite, a law degree, a finance resume, Cornell credentials in women, leadership, and diversity, 3 published books, 7 continents. Most people would build a career on any one of those. However, you stack them. So where does that hunger come from?
Curiosity, if I need to specify with one word only. It's curiosity. I'm drawn to discover. And I'm drawn to discover things that are not very visible immediately. I mean, what is there beneath the surface? Growing up with 2 very different life perspectives at home made that almost a necessity for me. It taught me to look for the other sides, to listen for perspectives that may be sometimes uncomfortable, contradictory, even painful or difficult to accept. But that's exactly also what helps me to see life through a wider lens and understand how things are connected with each other. I think that's where the hunger comes from, a huge desire to understand life more fully, not just professionally, but also like humanly. I have never really separated my career from my life. I don't believe we have professional and personal lives as two distinct worlds. I believe in the integration of both. We are who we are, right? And I think traveling was my biggest teacher, because it constantly reminds me that my truth is not universal. The way I see the world might not hold the true for someone in, I don't know, South Africa or anywhere else. And that feeling keeps me open, humble, and learning all the time. That's why I was asking for the name of the book, because I have this curiosity. I want to know more. I think curiosity doesn't let you settle into just one version of yourself. So it keeps nudging you, and there's always more to explore, more to understand about yourself and life in general.
Absolutely. And I think curiosity, when we stop being curious, we are not learning anymore.
Yeah.
And so we always have to stay curious. So I want to keep this conversation moving along, and I want to move into the segment called We Say Names. So your name, Öykü, in Turkish, carries the meaning of story. So before we go any further, what does it mean to walk through the world wearing the word story as your name?
Interesting question. So I've always had a very good relationship with writing and words. And I had a very big imagination since childhood. Even when I'm not physically writing, I always say I'm constantly taking mental notes. It's almost like a form of therapy for me to follow the stories, wherever I go. And I love to realize the smallest, most ordinary moments. And sometimes I just sit and watch people, especially at the airports because of traveling. And I start building stories in my head. Like, for example, I will see someone and think, this is Helen. She's flying to Los Angeles to meet the love of her life. But on the way, she will meet a stranger who will become her co-founder in 2 years' time. So, I love to, since childhood, this is the most, entertaining thing for me. And I love carrying the name story because it reminds me that everyone I pass by is a living story with the richness and with the complexity. So I love to see people in that way, because then you become more tolerant to them in a way. Because you know that they may be also going through some tough times, or they are celebrating something. It's not immediately, but it connects you, or it helps you to connect with others.
Yeah, and I think you have another book coming from that, because you could call it Stories from the Airport. The imaginations that you're thinking of. I think that would be such a wild, fascinating thing. And then see if they're actually true.
Okay, this is a good experimentation.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's a really fascinating way to look at the world and understand, because I'm a people watcher too.
Oh, okay.
And so I love to, think about where people are going, or, when I'm looking across the room and I'm seeing people in conversations and trying to be like, what are they talking about? What conversations going on there? So it's very fun. So kindred spirits there. So you have lived and worked across borders, languages, and continents. What is the strangest thing your name has done in someone else's mouth where you wish people would have known before they tried?
I have a very difficult name to pronunciate, even for Turkish people. It was a bit untraditional name while I was growing up, so it was always a struggle for others to, say my name. But I didn't know until I moved to UAE from Turkey that my name sounds Japanese. So whenever I am in the taxi in Dubai, drivers always ask me, you are from Japan. I don't mind to be Japanese at all. I would love to live in Tokyo for a couple of years, in fact, but I'm not Japanese. So I think I appreciate a lot when people ask how to pronunciate my name before we have the conversation, because it helps them, it helps me to understand, to connect. It's something crucial, I think, to know how to address the people that you are talking to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And really interesting about how names kind of supersede us. When I was much younger, I used to go by the shortened version of my name, Chris. And because I had a very high-pitched voice, people would assume, before there was video calls and it was just phone calls, and I would pick up the phone and I would say, "Hi, this is Chris," people would assume they were talking to a female.
Imagine.
And so that's when I started to assert my name as Christopher, because I wanted people to get my gender correct. And that's one of the reasons why we have this segment, We Say Names, because names are really important, and understanding where the names come from and the richness and the history that they bring. So thank you for sharing that. So I want to move into your moment of belonging. So you stood on Antarctica, the coldest, most remote continent on Earth.
Yeah.
Of all the places to feel belonging, that might be one of the most surprising. So I have to ask, did you feel like you belong there?
I was there just 3 months ago, so it's very soon. It's a magnificent
Wow.
place, like super remote and a very tough journey. Even for me, I'm a very experienced traveler. I don't mind going anywhere in any condition, but it was a very tough journey itself. But I think it's worth every second that you spent in Antarctica. If I could find any opportunity, I would go back there without like thinking now, because now I know how it looked like and what's expecting for me. Christopher, to be frank, like it's not belong to, but I really appreciate the fact that I belong to a beautiful planet called Earth. And like I knew it will be a life-changing trip because it's like very remote, it's a tough journey. Usually when you are going this kind of trips, you always discover something about yourself, etc. But I didn't know I will learn that many things about myself, life, nature. There are things that I know I learn during this 3 months time. And I'm sure there are other things that I will discover along the way. So Antarctica is not a trip only. Antarctica is an experience on its own, I think. This is how I'm looking at Antarctica. And I would love to go back.
That's so rich, right? To truly help you appreciate this planet we live on called Earth. One that it doesn't have infinite resources. There are going to be things that we're using up that we may use up in our lifetime. And so how do we get an appreciation for taking care of the planet we call home? So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Okay, so let us walk back to the day you decided you were leaving law. Was there a single moment, a meeting, a hallway, or a quiet drive home when you knew the law office was no longer where you belonged and you needed to go someplace else?
Look, in my first book, it's a book of collaboration by 36 women around the globe. They all share their own like biographical or life journeys in a way. And my chapter's heading is 40 years, 40 seconds. So I don't believe that any major life decision made based on like just one incident. Maybe this is my experience only. I cannot speak on behalf of others. But in my experience, it's all these little tiny moments overlapping between each other. But I remember clearly that like I wanted to create something more meaningful and impactful. And I knew that I will not able to create this direct impact on people just by drafting agreements in a corner office. So this was like a mind-changing moment for me. So I said I need to be working more closely with people, like, making the impact or bringing my purpose into life. So that was like, in a way, intentional shift. I didn't think that I will end up in HR because I was working mostly in diversity and inclusion space. But I thought that HR would be much closer to where I want to go. This is how the shift happens. But I cannot pick any like certain moment that triggered the decision. I think then it will be like reacting to the thing. I usually don't react. I love to plan things in advance. So this was like a combination or some of many little moments, I can say.
Yeah, I think I live somewhere probably in the middle of that spectrum, right? Where I love to plan and be very thoughtful, but I also can be very spontaneous. And so somewhere in the middle, and I think we all have an appreciation that there's a continuum of how we make decisions. And so thank you for that. It also makes me comforted that when I do spend a lot of time planning, I'm not overthinking it. I'm just being thoughtful.
Yes.
Little. So speaking about your books, you've written 3 of them. Your first published page, when you held it in your hands, what did it make you feel about belonging and just owning your space?
I think for me, it's not actually about holding the physical book in my hands. Of course, that's a beautiful moment, but the real impact comes later for me. It's when someone reads a line I wrote and sent me a message saying, I'm going through this hard time right now, or I'm at a decision point, and something you wrote helped me to see it differently. It gave me a perspective. That to me is the most precious gift in life. Because in that moment, it's no longer just my story. It becomes part of theirs. It means something I experienced, I reflected on, I put into the words has created a shift in someone else's thinking or feeling. And that's all I ever really hope for. Not to have all the answers, but to offer just a little different perspective that might help someone move forward with a bit more clarity or courage. That's why I'm always saying people are meeting with me in crossroads usually in their life. Either for me to give them a different perspective or give a little bit of courage. We all need that push sometimes. I also need it. So I think this is my role in a way in life.
Oh, that's great. I think that as somebody who is working on his own books, I think that's probably for me what I hope is that somebody quotes it back to me and been like, this was the line that changed everything for me. So I really do appreciate that and giving me something to aspire to. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. Okay, so this would not be I Know I Belong When if we only talked about the moments we knew that we belonged, but we also have to talk about the moments we did not belong. So 20 years inside of corporate finance as a woman, a Turkish woman, as a lawyer who pivoted into HR, there are a lot of only ones stacked into your career. So tell us about the room where you felt the most outside and what kept you in the seat.
It's funny, Christopher, or maybe not, but I never felt outside in the way you are asking, because I was always outside. As a child, I was an outsider because my mom isn't from the southern part of Turkey. Then in the summers, I was visiting my grandparents. I was an outsider again because my dad isn't from the West. I was the first lawyer in my family. Everybody has a medical career in our family. I was the youngest in leadership teams. For a long time, I was the first and often only woman in management committees. So being the outsider wasn't an exception for me. It was my normal. And I think that's what kept me in those rooms. I made peace with it. I didn't see it as a disadvantage. I saw it as a position of strength. Because when you are the only one, actually you are the only one who can bring a truly different perspective to the table. It doesn't mean it's easy. Don't take me wrong. It doesn't mean it's easy. But instead of questioning it or resisting to it, I think I choose to own it.
That's really powerful. Own it. You know, it might not be what you thought it was going to be or what you wanted, but you own it and make it yours.
Yeah, make it your story.
Yes, definitely make it your story. Don't let anybody else write it for you. You write it yourself. So your thesis is essentially when a place stops serving your growth, the cost of staying is higher than the cost of leaving. So I want to ask you the harder version of that. What is the most expensive room you stayed in too long? And what did it take from you before you finally walked out?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. I think it's corporate life. I believe I was always meant to be an entrepreneur. I don't usually regret my choices. And there's always a reason we do what we do, right? And corporate life, to be frank, taught me like great things. I built a career I'm genuinely proud of. I'm very grateful for all that. But I think I stayed longer than I should have. I'm a single mom. While that's not an excuse, it does make financial risk feel heavier when you are carrying a responsibility for a family. Stability matters in a different way for you. So I made a conscious decision many years back, and I told myself long time ago, at the age of 45, I would walk away and build something more purposeful just for myself. I didn't know what it was at that point, but I made this commitment to me. What's interesting is that throughout my career, almost in all career conversations that I had, I was always asked if I want to become a general manager. And the answer was an immediate no. Silently, internally, my real answer was, I want to be a founder. So I knew the answer for a very long time. I had the vision. I didn't excel, but I learned to be patient on the way. But I wish, in a way, I could make this earlier.
Yeah, I feel the same way, right? Somebody asked me, looking back a year from now, what would I have done differently? And there were some things where I wish I was like, I wish I would have just took the entrepreneurial route a year ago, right? And just because I was frustrated. I was not enjoying the work, but I was like, I'm here, I'm committed. I got to put 2 kids through college, However, now that I'm out on my own and being my own boss, it's freeing. It's so freeing.
Inspire us.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so I want to bring us back to how do we sustain belonging? So you believe travel makes us more resilient and more adaptive. 7 continents is proof of that concept. So talk to us as a leader coach for a second. What does standing on unfamiliar ground actually teach a person about how to belong anywhere?
Look, I think we discussed this at the very beginning of the conversation. I don't think true belonging comes from a place, a title, or other people's validation. It starts with belonging to yourself, to your truth, to your values and dreams. And when you stand on unfamiliar ground, everything usually rely on language, routine, even identity gets challenged. And that's where the real learning begins, in my view. You realize that you can adapt, you can connect, you can find your footing even when nothing feels familiar to you at all. And over time, with travels and with other experiences, that builds a kind of inner stability. You stop asking, do I fit in here? And start trusting the fact that I will find my way here, no matter what. So I think that's what makes you more resilient, more adaptive. Because when you belong to yourself first, you don't need to fit into every space. You can show up as the way you are anywhere because you are comfortable in your own skin. And I think that's a very different and amazing kind of belonging.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really important, as we discussed at the top of the show, about belonging to yourself and not necessarily in a place. I think that's super, super important. So you sustain other people's growth as your job. What sustains yours? The wine? The pages? The next plane ticket?
Next plane ticket, definitely, Christopher. I think that's all the listeners know by now. Don't laugh the answer, please. But I move a lot. My brain only really functions when I'm on the go. During the pandemic, I was living in a very tiny apartment with a huge balcony. And when I first rented it, there was no pandemic, etc. in that stage. So I remember thinking, what am I going to do with this space? It was so unnecessary for me. But eventually, that huge balcony helped me to keep my sanity. And it became the place where I wrote 2 of my books. Because your brain doesn't know the difference if you are walking in a balcony or you are walking near the seaside. It doesn't know the difference, right? So it really helps to calm down my nervous system, boost my creativity. So I need to be on the go. Either I can go for a walk, go for a run, I do kayak, or I travel with the plane. As long as I move, it really helped me to, sustain my energy internally.
I feel you on that one. Yes, people know I get my energy from other people because I'm an extrovert. However, I find the most enjoyment and where I can actually sort out my thoughts is when I'm walking in the woods, taking a hike.
Yeah.
I am somebody who loves to go seek out waterfalls and just go stand in front of them and just hear the rushing water. And it's so peaceful. And so for me, that's where I can really regain my energy, is hiking in the woods. So I feel you on that one. Always on the go. Okay, so we're starting to bring this conversation to a close, but I have one more fun question for you. So you say you are an unofficial wine sommelier. So here's the most important question of the conversation. Someone is sitting across from you. They just realized their career is no longer serving their growth and they need the courage to change it. You're pouring What is in their glass and what do you say when you set it down?
Oh, so if they have just realized it and need a courage, I'm definitely pouring a nicely chilled Argentinian Malbec. And I say, go slow, but intentional. But if they realize to make a career change some time ago, and they are overthinking, they are in the planning phase now, then I would definitely recommend them either a Napa Valley or Marlborough, depending on which side of the world they are in, Sauvignon Blanc. And I say, plan, and then let it go, and buy a good French champagne to open at the finish line.
Yes.
Celebrations are important.
They are very, very important. So thank you for that. I definitely have some wines to add to my list now. So thank you. Okay, so you know how we close out the show. You spend your days teaching people into whatever career you build next. However, today is not their moment, it's yours. So please finish the sentence, I know I belong when?
I realize my life is only one chapter in a long book connecting the past to the future.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That is so powerful. Thank you so much for this conversation. It was truly a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
This has been a great reminder that belonging is not a destination. It is a practice, and it starts with listening. Friends, if this episode challenged you to move outside your comfort zone, please follow our show and give us that 5-star review you know you want to give, and add a comment about what you will do to champion a culture of belonging. These actions will help to amplify the message to others so they too can find their own moment of belonging. Whether it is navigating the complexities of workplace culture, finding acceptance in a new school, building trust in a local community, or forging identities within our own families, these stories reflect the raw, honest, and unfiltered journeys each of us take every day. And we want to hear from you. Finish the sentence, I know I belong when, and send us a voice note. Your story could open a future episode. Thank you for listening. Know that your bold, authentic self is welcomed, valued, and loved. And until next time, remember, you belong here.